எதன் கண்ணே நிலையாகி இருந்திடும் உலகமெல்லாம் எதனின்று அனைத்துலகும் எழுமோ மற்றிவையாவும் எதன் பொருட்டாம் எதனால் வையமெல்லாம் எழுந்திடும் எல்லாமும் எதுவே ஆகும் அதுதானே உளபொருளாம் சத்தியமாம் அச்சொருபம் அகத்தில் வைப்பாம். விதவிதமா நிலைகளெல்லாம் விசாரம் செய்து இச்சையரு பரமபதம் யாவொன்றுண்டோ அதனையே திடமாக அகத்தால் பற்றி அனவரதம் உலகில் விளையாடு வீரா. எது சகல விதமான தோற்றங்கட்கும் யதார்த்தமதாய் அகத்துளதோ அதை அறிந்தாய். அதனால பார்வையினை அகலாதென்றும் ஆசை போல் உலகில் விளையாடு வீரா. With Bhagavan's immense grace, we are coming to the last two verses in the Upasana Prakaranam, the worship of the self. We are in the penultimate verse today, the verse number 26, which goes like this: Vidavidamai nilaygalellam விசாரம் செய்து இச்சையாறு பரமபதம் யாதொன்றுண்டோ அதனையே திடமாக அகத்தால் பற்றி அனவரதம் உலகில் விளையாடு வீரா. எது சகல விதமான தோற்றங்கட்கும் யதார்த்தமதாய் அகத்துளதோ அதை அறிந்தாய். அதனால பார்வையினை அகலாதென்றும் ஆசை போல் உலகில் விளையாடு வீரா. Sadhuvam Swamigal translates this as Vasishta says to Rama, "O hero," Veera stands for hero. "O hero, having inquired into all the states, விதவிதமான நிலைகளெல்லாம் விசாரம் செய்து, having inquired into all the states which are of various kinds, play your role in the world, always clinging firmly with the mind only to that one which is the supreme state devoid of reality." Play your role in the world, clinging with the mind to the supreme state. இச்சையரு பரமபதம் யாதொன்றுண்டோ அதனையே அகத்தால் பற்றி ஆசை போல் உலகில் விளையாடுகிறா. The first portion and the second portion, the first two lines and the second two lines indicate sadhana and sahaja. The sadhana Vasishta Muni is saying in the first two sentences, "O hero, having inquired into all the states which are of various kinds, play your role in the world, always clinging firmly with the mind only to that one which is the supreme state devoid of reality. The second part he embarks by Vasishtha Muni embarks on by saying that now that you know, O hero, since you have known that self, which exists in the heart as the reality of all various appearances, therefore, without ever abandoning that outlook, play your role in the world as if you have desire. So the verse goes like this. The first part is with effort, and in the second part, the outlook itself has changed. That is the verse here. There is a slight difference between this verse number 26 and verse number 24 and 25. In their emphasis, the sadhana emphasis is given a small difference so that it will be applicable to all the sadhakas, the Atma Vicharam or the holding of the reality. Let us briefly look at the verse number 24 and verse number 25. Verse number 24 was a summing up of earlier verses on heart, Hridayam, from Yoga Vasishtam. Adalinal Arivumayamam Sutta Idayate Ahathai Serkum Sadhanayal Vadanegalodu Vayu Udukkamu Sarum Tane. The import was now align the mind, merge the mind with the heart, so that the vasana subsidence and the breath subsidence are natural or automatic. So the emphasis was totally on only taking the mind to the heart. Though the mention was made of vasana kshaya and also the control of prana, but they were natural products of the sadhana and not as support sadhanas themselves. In fact, Sadhanam Swamigal takes the support of this verse to point out that in Ramana Gita, when the sadhanas were mentioned, Bhagavan was using this import only, that the prana will automatically be subsided when you go into the heart. But that's another matter which is not required for us, not in our purview as of now, not necessary. But the import of these verses in sadhana, in the Upasana Prakarana here, are very interesting and very linearly arranged by Bhagavan and Muruganar Swamigal. We can briefly look at that order so that we get some idea as to the importance of directly going for self-inquiry and having all other supports automatically given by self-inquiry. They are naturally given by the practice of self-inquiry. And the other method we are going to get in 26, which we will go briefly after looking at verse number 25. Verse number 25 also, from Devika Latram it is taken. It also has a similar impact or import on the main sadhana, on taking the mind to the, with a slightly different angle. Akila Upadi Agandra Arive, Arivedu, Ahamat Chivam, Atchivam, Endranisam, Ahatte Agala Dhyanam, Adanal Ahattin, Agala Ashakti Agatri. So there also the adjunct free consciousness, which is Shiva, that is I. This meditation, when it is held continuously, as a byproduct, all the attachments fall away or are removed. So 24 and 25 have the direct reliance on the this bringing of the mind or merging of the mind into the heart or self-inquiry. Whereas now, the verse number 26 gives another direct support. It gives the support of playing the roles in the world as though with desire. That means with a detached outlook, which Bhagavan may not give that in Who Am I, in his original instructions, or in Upadesha Saram, or in Ulladu Narpadu, but we will find that expansion of self-inquiry in talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi in many places. We'll go into that in due course. But verse number 26 is, in that sense, the instructions from Vasishtha Muni to Sri Rama is giving this additional support of detached play of the role in the world, whereas that is an automatic byproduct in the verse from Devi Kalokam. The detachment, asakti agatru, the detachment in the play of the role is automatically delivered by Akila Upadi Agandra Arivedu Achivam Ahamena. So when we do the primary sadhana, automatically detachment is there. But here, explicitly, we are given the detached work as a support, that self-inquiry can go hand in hand with detached work. And we had seen towards the end of the last satsang or last gathering that detachment is only the Jnana Marga word for surrender. In Bhakti Marga, it is surrender. You will find Bhagavan combining surrender with vichara in many places in talks. That's why Muruganar Swamigal, we have seen earlier, Muruganar Swamigal would emphasize that he is neither a Vedantin nor a Siddhantin, but he is a Ramanantin, or only Ramanantam I know. I don't know Vedantam or Siddhantam. It is Bhagavan's touch that brings in surrender and vicharam together. But in Jnana Marga, relying on the self being there, the detachment word is akin to surrender in bhakti. So with that in mind, without forgetting that, we can go into the details of this verse. Having seen the layout in which in the sadhana world, where exactly Vasishtha Muni is giving us support, the same support is not something alien in Bhagavan's teaching. It is given again and again in the talks. When many people ask Bhagavan, is work a hindrance to self-realization? Bhagavan would say, no. But we'll see that in due course. Now, we go into the verse proper. Having inquired into all the states which are of various kinds. So, Vidavidamai Nilaigalellam Visaram Seide. So, when the first part, that is the holding of the Supreme with the effort, before that, preceding to that, Vasishtha Muni asks Rama, inquire into all the possibilities that cover the whole of your experience. Vidavidamai Nillaigalellam Visaram Seide. What are these states? This is in Vedanta, usually it is the waking, dream and deep sleep states which cover the various states that are experienced. Of course, one can say that as an individual, we go through childhood, youth, middle age and old age. But the common factor in both the analysis is going to be that the self remains unchanged. And in Ulladu Narpadu, we have this time-based analysis, that is, the time is split into the three types: past, present and future. And Bhagavan takes us to holding the truth in the present. So these are the two things that we are going to see today. That is, in the analysis of the various states, we are going to take up, though it may be a redundancy, we might have covered it before, the waking, dream and deep sleep, and the past, present and future. Now, the waking, dream and deep sleep are covered totally in Mandukya Upanishad, where the individual in the waking state is called as Vishwa, the individual in the dream state is called as Taijasa, and the individual in the sleep is called as Prajna. Vishwa, Taijasa and Prajna. Now, which of the three are we becomes the question. Now, in the waking state, we know that the Vishwa is experiencing the world through the senses, and the senses cannot be actively engaged without the mind, without the subtle body being present. So, the subtle body uses the breath and the senses, and the gross body is used as an instrument to participate in this world experience in the waking state. In the dream state, though the experiences are similar to the waking state, and Bhagavan would go only with that similarity, not with the dissimilarity. But the difference is that the images or the experiences are all internal and in the mind. The world is internal to one and is in the mind. Whereas in deep sleep, for the Prajna, there is neither the external world nor the internal world. Now, the inquiry into the self is, which of these three is I? So, Bhagavan would say that in inquiry, it becomes clear that I am the witness of the waking, the dream, and the deep sleep. And all the three pass before me. So, this is called as Turiya, the fourth state. The fourth state where, in relationship to the three, it is beyond the three. Beyond waking, beyond dream, beyond deep sleep, beyond the three identities as Vishwa, Taijasa and Prajna. So it is the Turiya. But as Turiya can stand alone, Turiya is capable of standing alone. It is the support of the three. At the same time, it has the capacity to stand alone. So Turiya in its standalone nature is Turiyatita. That means the word Turiya or the three states are not there in the self. It transcends everything, and it is not even the fourth state. It is Turiyatita, they say. Now that is the inquiry regarding the three states and how the reality which Vasishtha Muni is asking Rama to hold is the I, the unchanging I, not the one who participates in the waking experience and then changes in the dream and then once again changes in the deep sleep without any experience of the outer or inner world, but with a feeling of happiness, but self-ignorance being present. Now, when the real I is held, the witness to all the three states and beyond, Turiyatita, the self-luminous self is the reality, and that is what Vasishtha Muni is asking Rama to hold with the mind, hold that which is unchanging. And when we go into inquiry of the past, present and future, we go to the verse in Ulladu Narpadu, which is Nigalvinai Patri Irappediru Nirpa Nigalkal Avayum Nigalve Nigalvondre Indrunmai Tedad Irappediru Teravunal Wondrinri Endavunal. So Nigalvinai Patri, holding the present, only the past and future they arise. Nigalvinai Patri Irappediru Nirpa. the past and the future, they arise and they exist only holding the present. Nigalkalavayam nigalve, even happening, they are also known as, the past is also known as present, and the future will be known as present when it happens. So nigalvandre, the present alone is the truth. Intrunmai terad. In the present moment, one has to hold the self. In the present moment, once again, one comes to the experience of waking, dream, and deep sleep in self-inquiry. In present moment, we saw in the last the session that we had that in self-inquiry, we can see Bhagavan taking us through the three stages here itself, the waking, dream, and deep sleep in the present moment itself. How was that? We saw that Bhagavan asks us to observe our thoughts, sitting down and letting the senses not being tracked or followed or being attached to. And as thought arises, what we have done is that we have treated the world, the sensory world, as a dream, and now the thoughts are in the conscious dream. We are now aware of the dream because the subtle mind, the subtle body experience is there. So from the Vishwa, who was going through the senses, Bhagavan is, when we sit and inquire in self-inquiry, Bhagavan has made us into Tejasa. Because now that only Guru, the light form of I also being thought and the world is also of thoughts, Bhagavan brings us to that by asking us to observe the rising thought. So he brings us from Vishwa to Tejasa. And when the thought is let go of, we are letting go of the dream. We are not following the dream in the present moment. In the present moment, we are letting go of the thought, we are letting go of the dream. For whom is this thought? For the dreamer. For the dreamer, for me. So, who am I? It stills the Tejasa. When the Tejasa is stilled, Prajna is there. The one in deep sleep who is still. But the difference between Prajna of deep sleep and the Prajna in self-inquiry is that this Prajna is conscious. So, he is not without self-awareness. With self-awareness, the stilling, we are made to bring deep sleep to the present moment. So, we treated the sensory experience as a dream and we were asked to follow the thoughts. And in the dream of thoughts, Bhagavan is asking us to let go of the dream and hold the dreamer. So, from Vishwa to Tejasa and from Tejasa to Prajna, by stilling the I, who am I? And when that vasanas which are there, which give sustenance to the three states, and the subtle and the causal and the gross bodies, when all the vasanas in the causal area are eliminated, then the Prajna also vanishes. And aham iti sakshat atmarupena bhati, says Bhagavan. And that is the second part of this verse. That the sadhaka in Rama is asked by Vasishtha Muni to hold the self with effort. With effort you hold the self and play your role with detachment. Play your role as though with desire. We will spend a little bit of time in that because whatever we have worked up to this in the Upasana Prakarana bring us to an interesting point on this term, the detachment. The detachment which we call as surrender in the bhakti. The detachment, when we look at it, detachment to the world, we had discussed the concept of witnessing. Witnessing is without like or dislike observing, and one can easily see that is what is called as detachment. When one can keep the observation without like or dislike, there is a detachment in the role play. And detachment, we can easily see, is unconditional love. In terms of bhakti, it is unconditional love. If we take the simple example of going to a shop or looking at an auto person or at home in many instances, when the interactions in relationships, the roles takes place. Suppose the shopkeeper there, he shortchanges us, or we clearly know that he has held back some cash while giving some note. He has held back something as though he doesn't know. Now, when we realize that, when in the normal course, what happens when the attachment is there is a flaring up of anger or whatever the emotion that is there, and the action is clouded by the emotion, is clouded by the ignorance, by the attachment, and by the resultant emotion, and that is from where the action emanates. Whereas when we look at detachment or play as though you are having interest, what happens when we combine the witnessing into this? When we bring the witnessing into this, we see that the process is now not in the hold of the attachment, but is under the purvey of the observation without like or dislike. The role play, right from entering into the shop, observing oneself through without like or dislike, it covers this particular incident also. That even when that it is observed that he is shortchanging us, one is also observant of the rise of the ego and anger within oneself. And when that observation without like or dislike is there, when that detachment in role play is there, we find that the anger subsides and one is able to take the ego to the source. And whatever may be the action that comes out is not a reaction to the situation, is not a reaction to the happenings, but is from the independent or the unattached source. When we describe like this, as nearly as possible, we come through detachment. Now, this is not some theory. We can actually see this in practice. That is, we are now seeing the detachment aspect of the instruction from Vasishtha Muni. We saw what it is to hold the self with the mind. We are now looking at the detachment aspect. Now, this detachment, when we look at it as observation without like or dislike, that can be a continuous state, that can be a practice and natural state, because some fundamental activity like observing, that is looking or listening, we can see that the detachment is part and parcel of this, and how detachment helps us keep self-attentive can be easily practiced while participating in such a session or in any other relationship. When we how this came upon me was in the year 2003, I think. I had gone into the practice of this witnessing, and that is what Vasishtha Muni is saying here, that you can practice detached role play along with holding the self with the mind. What I had learned in my way, whether the teacher meant it or not, was that while walking in the park, I would observe. I was taught to observe, and I would observe the whole happenings there in the sensory plane, whether it is positive or negative. I would be looking at my reaction to it, my like or dislike. Now, some garbage is here, some butterfly is flying there. First of all, what it does, the looking of detached approach to life, is that it stops the rambling of the mind. Now, in walking in the park, you will observe that if you are not looking at it as a detachment practice opportunity, then the mind is going off here or there. Some topic will come for 20 minutes, it will go off into that. Whereas, if you take that as an opportunity to look at detachment, then the rambling mind is gone. There is an attention to what is this attachment and detachment. And when we look at the sensory experiences without like or dislike, what exactly happens is the consciousness or the mind is freed from that plane, and one will be able to start observing thoughts. Now, we can easily recall that this is exactly the same thing that Bhagavan asks us to do with breath. When Bhagavan gives us breath as a support for starting self-inquiry, if one is not able to directly come to self-inquiry, Bhagavan says, observe the breath. Observe whatever Ishvara has given you. And when you calmly observe that, then the breath quietens down. With the quietening down of breath, the mind also quietens down. With that quietened mind, you can start self-inquiry. So, detachment through observing the senses. And one of the easier senses between speaking and listening, in the initial stages, we will find that the detachment practice may be easier while listening. So, whenever we are listening to anything, we can see that one can look at one's own the like and dislike coming and hindering the listening. So while listening, the attention is not only on the sound waves coming to the ear, but also to the reactions one has to those sound waves. Oh, this is good. Oh, this is bad. Oh, this should not have been like this. When all those are the attachments. Since we are having the intellect, the attachments are many, and we won't even realize that so many attachments are there, because each of us will have a different shade of attachment to each of the concepts. When some speaker is doing a speech, or when we are talking to some person in the market, some words will impact us, whereas to our own friend nearby, that word would not have impacted. Some other word will. That means what? The intellect has become in such a way that each one of us is living in our own world of attachments. It is unique to us, and each one has to look into one's own attachments. It cannot be done by another. That is why Bhagavan says in Who Am I? Guru or God will show the path, but each one has to walk in the path by himself. He has to take the medicine himself. For one who is Rama, to know that he is Rama, he doesn't need a mirror. All he has to do is look at himself. So the practice of detachment, I have given two examples. That is when we are in the early morning walk or in the listening mode. But we can easily see that this can percolate into a way of living itself. Certain activities which we see we cannot do with self-attention, slowly when detachment percolates, that may not be a hindrance at all. If that is part of the duty, it may not be a hindrance. Slowly with practice, because sufficient amount of detachment is there in that. Initially, we may avoid that activity so that the sadhana is not interrupted. But then when the sadhana deepens and when the detachment deepens, that activity will know it is not out of fear of disturbance from the activity we are living, but it is a conscious living or conscious participating. So that aspect of this verse is what is an addition to the earlier two verses. But it always comes with any additional support always has some drawback also. Now, I would like to put that caution here at the right time. Though I have come through the path with Vasishtha Muni is saying that along with practice of detachment, I have come, then Who Am I started taking hold. It is not necessary for everyone to adopt that support along with Who Am I. One can directly practice Who Am I itself. That is itself sufficient, as suggested in verse number 24 and 25. Whatever it has to bring, whatever good has to come, will come automatically with self-inquiry. As Sri Krishna says, whoever does Ananya Bhakti, which is self-inquiry, all their loads I carry. So, given that that small condition that you need not take the support of detachment, because when such support is given, it will appear very enticing that, oh, this is easy, I can start off something like that. But while starting something like that, we should never lose track of self-inquiry. That self-inquiry is the main sadhana, and that can be standalone. And so at some point that will be standalone, and that too will get absorbed in the self. With that understanding, the sadhana portion, the first two lines are covered. What are the second two lines in Vasishtha Muni's verse? எது சகல விதமான தோற்றங்கட்கும் யதார்த்தமதாய் அகத்துள்ளதோ அதை அறிந்தாய். Now Vasishtha Muni is saying to Rama, now with the practice of detachment and deliberate effort-based holding of the Supreme with the mind, now you clearly know, now you have clearly understood what is this thought-free state, what is this Supreme state. Therefore, Yadarthamadai Ahattulado Ade Arindai, you have already understood that, you know that. Adanala Parvainai Akaladendru. Now, without moving from that state of abiding or merging and or living in the self, without leaving the self, without living that outlook, the activities can still go on, and others may say this fellow still has interest, this fellow still has desire because he is still doing these things, but it is only asai pol. But the second part of the verse, if I may so suggest, is more towards abidance, because already Rama is said to know and is asked not to leave that outlook. So what is this outlook? What is this outlook that Vasishtha Muni is asking Rama to have? Edu sagala vidamana totrangatkum, for all appearances, yadarthamadai, what is the natural state, which is the summum bonum of all appearances, adai arindai. Now you have understood that, you have realized that. What is this? Bhagavan is asked, this is called as Jnana Drishti in who am I? What is Jnana Drishti? Is the question in who am I? And Bhagavan says, Jnana Drishti என்றால் சும்மா இருப்பது. He says that to be still, to still the ego, to still the mind is Jnana Drishti. சும்மா இருப்பதாவது மனதை ஆத்மாவில் லயிக்க செய்வது. What is to be still? The mind is resolved into the self. Is resolved into the self is the word Bhagavan uses in the English translation of Ulladu. Resolved means it is no more the mind. It is no more the mind. It is the unmoving consciousness. This is where we can recall Bhagavan's interaction with the other great one, Seshadri Swamigal. Once again, we can bring their blessings back to our satsang by recalling the interaction between them. I think it is in the mango cave, must have been in the summer days of Virupaksha cave, and one witness is there, Vasudeva Shastri again, I think, who records this for our sake. And the incident goes somewhat like this, the oft-repeated incident, but quite appropriate here because it is the Paramapadam. And Seshadri Swamigal is of such state of consciousness that he can easily detect what is the thought that is going on in the other. And obviously, many disciples and many devotees of Seshadri Swamigal would have benefited because he would clearly direct them or guide them towards bhakti, towards surrender. Now, when he comes near Bhagavan, he is not able to find any thought flow, any thought current, and he says to Bhagavan, would it not be nice if you think of Arunachala. And Bhagavan says, where is the difference between the worshipper and the worshipped? Where is the division or difference between the worshipper and worshipped? And Seshadri people says, yes, there is no division. But however, for me, Arunachala is Arunachala. And he does Sashtanga pranams to Arunachala. And he goes, that is the incident, more or less, I am paraphrasing. Now, the key part there is in the Paramapadam, in the Jnana Drishti, in the still consciousness, there is no division as the I and the other, that is the worshipped. The Ishvara occupying the rest of the worlds, all the worlds the Ishvara consumes and occupies, and I am the worshipper. And this consciousness is divided as I and Ishvara. That division, is it real? Asks Bhagavan. Is it there? It is not there. In the still, and this is the best way to worship the Ishvara, says Bhagavan in his first prose work, that is self-enquiry. The preamble, the introductory note itself is there a better way to worship the Supreme, which is all, except to abide firmly as that, as all? Because any division that we create, that I am separate, is a infringement on the infinity or the limitlessness or the unconditionality of the Supreme. So Bhagavan says, is there a division in that stillness? When the I is still, then the Supreme is there. And Vasishtha Muni says, now that you know this, you know the Jnana Drishti, which is clearly not knowing the three times past, present and future, or knowing something that is far away, telepathy or television, all these things are not Jnana Drishti, says Bhagavan in Who Am I? So that is the Jnana Drishti that Vasishtha Muni wants us to have, that the still consciousness, Edusagala Vidamana Totrangatkum Edarthamadai Ahakulado. What is there inside us as the reality behind all the appearances? It is the divisionless consciousness. It is the still consciousness. It is the Jnana Drishti. It is the I. Adai Arindai. Oh Rama, you now know that this whole Leela of Yoga Vasishtam is just played for our sake. There is no sadhaka there in Rama, but for our sake the play is made so that we are able to understand. And that is what Bhagavan says to Professor K. Swaminathan when he asks. Bhagavan says indirectly that when Swaminathan sir asks, did Rama require all these instructions of detachment and role play and all that? He was avatara, Purna avatara. And Bhagavan says that who has this doubt whether Rama required it or not? And somebody else says it is Professor Swaminathan who had this doubt. Then he says this Yoga Vasishtam and this sadhana is for Swaminathan. Like that, the clarity is that the Yoga Vasishtam is doesn't imply that Vasishta is instructing to the avataram, but it is for us. It is for us that in Devi Kalotram, Amma asks the questions of Shiva and Shiva gives Upadesham to us through Amma. So here Vasishta Muni says, now identify with that stillness. Identify with that stillness and play your role. The question arises, the stillness is of the nature of snake and rope. When you are still, you are not moving. When you are moving, you are obviously not still. So the Vedantic illustration of the illusion of, if you see the rope, you obviously don't see the fearful snake. If you are looking at the snake with fear, obviously you have missed the rope. Now, that seems to be the analogy here. Then how is it that Vasishta Muni is asking the sadhaka to include the movement, detachment, however it may be? Is it not that we are strictly to be prevented from that direction and hold only stillness? Bhagavan says in talk number 313 that the Jnana Margi, the Jnani has to be an expert of the three types of illusions. The three types of illusions are the completely unconditioned illusion of snake and rope. If you see the snake, you don't see the rope. If you see the rope, you don't see the snake. Then the conditioned superimposition of mirage. In the mirage, even though you see the mirage, you know it is mirage, it does not disappear from your vision. Venkateshji used to say, when you drive a car on a hot road during the day, ahead of you, you will see as the puddle of water is there. Then you will not be deceived for long, because you know that's just the internal reflection of light and it is an appearance of water there. So you are not deceived the second time. But the appearance doesn't go. The appearance to the eye is still there. Though you know it is not there, the appearance is still there. Therefore, the Jnani knows, even when the world is appearing, the Jnani has no purpose with that. He knows that it is not going to quench his thirst. Therefore, he is the master of not only the illusion of rope and snake, but he is also the master of the conditioned superimposition of mirage, the illustration of mirage. Then Bhagavan continues. Then somebody will ask, in a mirage, the water does not quench the thirst, but the world is not like that. And I see a Jnani wear dress, work appropriately to the custom, talk in the right language in which the question was asked, and respond most appropriately, much better than others. Now, how is that? That there is purpose. The food of this world, definitely it at least satisfies the hunger for a few hours. So there is this purpose, and Bhagavan says, just because there is a limited purpose does not mean that that state is real, because the dream indicates that the dream realities may appear real in a dream, but the moment you wake up, it is not there. Therefore, the master of Advitiya Jnana, the stillness of the eye, is also the master of the dream illusion. That is where he is able to participate in the sadhanas and show. Bhagavan in the kitchen participates with those cooks who are so simple, but who all become jnanis. By the time one of the cooks, the article was put up by Muktaji 2-3 days back in the group Rasanubhavam. So beautifully she accounts how Bhagavan would take them through the practice of cooking, not only revealing the nuances, the fineries of the art and practice of cooking, but where the ego interferes, where all the ego comes in, and more is put to Bhagavan, more attention, less attention, inattention, attachment, all this Bhagavan reveals. And the way she says, the love for Bhagavan, since it emanates from the heart, the work that we do is fully only in the self. It is not anywhere else. It is the fullness of the limitless consciousness. There is no division as worker and me and the act of working. It is all in the limitless consciousness. And Bhagavan does not leave us without taking us to that oneness, where even when working is there, the divisionless consciousness is not touched, is experienced as one's own direct experience. So the work is no hindrance, and the joining of the self into one experience, whether work is there or work is absent, whether mind is there or mind is not there, the undivided self alone is. Till that anubhava is natural, one should hold practice in whatever way Bhagavan chooses to advise us, whether directly with self-inquiry, or with self-inquiry and surrender, or with self-inquiry and detachment to work. Whichever way we find is acceptable and likable to us, we should practice with sincerity. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Let us sit in practice for 10 minutes.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as the self in all beings. What does one say about the glory of that state which Bhagavan is talking about? And about his infinite compassion, we find that he has blessed all aspects of sadhana. We find that in Upadesha Saram. We find it in his Charitram. As we dwell on his Charitram, he has, as Nandakumarji referred, he has blessed even the art of cooking, the culinary art as well. There is nothing, no sadhana that he has not blessed. So it is but natural that the sadhana of detachment, which is a very great sadhana, a very immense support, and in most of the methods considered to be a prerequisite for the vichara itself. How does the detachment come about? Sometimes the detachment for which is a prerequisite in a way for Atma Vichara, because if one is not having that sense of dispassion or disinterest in the so-called objective reality, and how will one be able to turn inwards with that courage, great courage which is required for self-inquiry. And Bhagavan is called by Vishwanatha Swami Udasinaya Namaha, the one who is totally indifferent, totally detached, as Udasinaya Namaha. And we see that in Bhagavan's life. There is not one who can be more compassionate than Bhagavan. But while narrating the story of Lakshmi and Bhagavan, Nandakumarji said, when Lakshmi was brought, Bhagavan said, who is going to look after her? And Nandakumarji laughed and said, he is turning away Lakshmi. Of all people, Lakshmi. That he is that much of the epitome of detachment that he is. Whether it is Mother Aragammal also, he doesn't call her Amma in the beginning. Or that he just epitomizes that. The total detachment to all things. At the same time, the total anuraga or the absolute pinnacle of love is there. So the two go hand in hand, as it were. It is to show that the love is not born of attachment. There is love, there is pure love, but there is no attachment over there. This is actually, in Bhagavan's case, a byproduct, or one can say, in the case of any jnani, the detachment comes from the jnana. Now, bhakti also comes from jnana. But then bhakti is seen as a support in the sadhana, detachment is seen as a support in the sadhana. All that which can come directly from self-inquiry, if one has been blessed with that path to take that support and go to self-inquiry, Bhagavan is allowing that and blessing that path. And every path is blessed because that's the faith. Because Bhagavan has said, Yeppeyeritte Uruvil, and then Irundanai Madantorum Vida Vida Uruvai, you are manifest in various faiths. That's how Nandakumarji has interpreted it through one of the talks of Bhagavan, that Madam is any kind of faith in any one single-mindedness. And what does that single-mindedness in one area give? It gives detachment from everything else. So if you see bhakti also, if you see the great bhaktas, they're not worried about anything else. Tyagaraja Swami can sing Nidhi Sali Sukama. What is there in wealth? Rama. Is wealth greater than the joy of Rama's Sannidhi? So who can say that? Because of that he could live the life of penury. And about Mother Aragamma also, Shanattanantapuri Swamiji in Mother Aragama's Ashtotram, he says, she chose the life of penury. She actually chose it. She adopted it. It was not that she had to be poor, but she chose it as a sort of a vrata. And about Holy Mother Sharda Devi, Sri Ramakrishna says that she chose a very ordinary looking form to hide her divine luster. Even that form which we see, which appears so divine, he says she chose it as a very ordinary form. So that is they all show that, display that. But what Nandakumarji also pointed out to us today is that while all these supports are blessed by Bhagavan, they are not alternatives. They are not blessed as alternatives. They are blessed as supports for the sadhana of self-inquiry leading to steady self-abidance. There is one thing which he has pointed out to us. Even if we see in Ashtakam, Bhagavan says, Manigalil Sarad. So you see the essence in the various objects. But then in the jnana, where are the objects and where is the sarad? There is no differentiation at all. But he talks of the thread to help us at the first stage. He says there are the thoughts. He says, what is the mind? The mind has got thoughts. Then he says, Naiva Manasa. So he says, first there are thoughts, then there is the I thought, which is the string, which is the basis of all the thoughts, to detach us from all the other thoughts. See, he gives us that detachment over there. The detachment from the world in the form of thoughts, the attachment to the I thought. Then detachment from the I thought by turning to the source. So in Atma Vichara also there is step-by-step detachment which he allows us and takes us to the final merger into the source. And that is what even Shiva Prakasham Pillai has said in his Padamalai, that நான் என்றெழும் ஏது அது மனமென்று நவில்வோன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே ஞான திருஷ்டி அதன் லயம் என்று நடிப்போன் பாதம் வாழ்கவே. He says that, which Nandakumarji quoted today, that what is the mind? It is only the I, and the dissolution of the I in the source is jnana drishti, and that is the blessing of Bhagavan's every word is to bless us to be in that state. And he also has given us a glimpse of the state of the Jnani by saying, Asai pol ulahil vilayaduvira. Whatever the Jnani does in the world is only as if he is liking something, as if he is fond of something, as if he has all these likes and dislikes and all the varieties of the mind, as if a pole is the clue which has been given. When we approach the Jnani, we recognize that, of course, in Bhagavan's life, even the manifestation was all the time expressive only of pure Jnana. That is a very rare instance where even in the manifestation there will be no stepping down. And say, as Nandakumarji said, even while talking with Sheshadri Swami or talking with anyone or anything in any context, Bhagavan will not compromise. He never changes that standard. But that is not necessarily a manifestation in every case. And Bhagavan has said that also to Natanananda. That may be because of Ishvara's design, that manifestations will be different in the Jnana manifestations. So when we see that, we can understand that just as everything is part of that, more so the Jnani's behavior is as inexplicable as the state of Jnana itself, but it's as beautiful as that. So that's what we can see in this verse, which is again a great blessing. And Nandakumarji has put it in its context and given us the essence of that verse, to get back again and again to that by remembering the glory of that state. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramanacentre. Thank you. Namo Ramanacentre.
Ramananjali. la